Welcome to CPAC Now, America Uncanceled. With everything that's going on across the globe, but most specifically with Ukraine, we thought the perfect guest to have on would be Walid Phares, who was a former foreign policy advisor to President Donald Trump. Walid, thanks for joining us on America Uncanceled.
Thank you for having me, Matt. It's a pleasure to be with you.
You have a unique perspective on all of these issues. Tell us what our listeners should think about what's unfolding with Ukraine and Russia.
Well, the most thing we need to pay attention to are the intentions of all sides, and of course our policy at the end. The Russian leadership, Putin, they want to secure three areas in Ukraine, and they did so far, which are the east, those two republics they claim they have announced, the south, all of the coast of the south, including Crimea, which is the most important part that they have already taken in 2014. Then coming close and surround the capital to get a recognition of what they have done in the east and the south. Now, the problem is that the Ukrainian forces and resistance and their president have resisted, and the price is going to be high. So now our policy, the most important thing, Matt, is that what we're going to do about it. The Biden administration was not really ready for the matter. That's why you see multiple different approaches and statements made from the beginning of the campaign to the end of the campaign today, where the U.S. decided not to take any more buy Russian oil. Problem is, on the one hand, the Biden administration said we're not going to send troops inside Ukraine, which is, I think, a good idea, not to clash with the Russians. But on the other hand, not putting enough pressure for two things, and I conclude. One is to build up the NATO countries in a way that they would deter the Russians. And two, what are we doing with our oil production here? That's the big key question.
So, Walid, I remember talking to many people who advised President Trump and worked for President Trump, and most of them predicted that Putin would not go into Ukraine, that he was going to amass troops, saber rattle, and then find another way to gain influence over the Ukraine. Obviously, he has invaded Ukraine, but is he going to kind of do a stagger step here and try to figure out a way to come up with a kind of negotiated settlement? Or do you think we're going to see a lot of dead people as he continues to wage this war?
That's a great question. Actually, from a larger perspective, I would say it is ironic that the Russians or others will act only when Trump is not in the administration.
I know, it's true.
So we remember that 2014, under Obama, who, by the way, and I was an advisor to Romney at the time, 2012, had told the Russian leadership, I'll have this election, and after that, I'll be flexible. And I am always wondering, was that term, I'll be flexible, a kind of a green light to do the 2014 invasion of Ukraine? I don't know. We'll leave it to historians. But basically, under Trump administration, you know it as much as I do, and your wife does, there was nothing. There was no threat to Ukraine. The Russians kept very calm. And suddenly, at the end of the first year of the Biden administration, there is an invasion of some parts of Ukraine, not all of Ukraine. Now, to answer your question, Matt, I think Vladimir Putin got what he wanted. He was very concerned about many things happening in Ukraine. So he has those two republics and he has the ports. He claims this was offered by Russia to Ukraine some 50 years ago, but that's a Ukraine-Russia issue. I don't think now he's going to venture to go forward and further. And I don't think that he has business or capacity to invade Europe at this point in time. So now is the time, I think, for negotiations. We need to find a partner, a moderator who would help us in these negotiations, and we don't at this point in time.
The other thing I've heard from a lot of experts is that something has changed with Vladimir Putin. That he's always been this savvy actor who has always kind of played his cards very adroitly. But they're wondering if something has snapped with his mental capacity, and is he not listening to reason anymore? I know that's a lot of psychoanalysis of a world leader, but that's part of the game here. Do you think Putin is acting differently than he has previously, or do you think this is just what he does?
Of course he's acting differently. Any leader, the best leader in the world, when he's committing more than 200,000 forces to invade another country, and he's receiving all these reports every single day that there are people killed and injured, that the Russian economy has been hit very hard. Even Winston Churchill, was very composed at one point when the blitz occurred over London. He had those very strong moments. Each person has a different way to react. But my view, my personal view against some of the depiction that Putin has all the control. No, there is a system. We fail to understand that Russia has an army, has intelligence services, has a deep state like all countries around the world, and they are waging this campaign. They actually are the ones who have proposed these plans to Putin. Now, he's nervous. There is no doubt about it. He's under pressure. He may make errors of judgment. That's possible. But I think the system is in charge in Russia.
So so we look about the ramifications of all of this. Who else should be nervous about a Putin invasion?
I think all our allies in the region. And if you allow me to expand by saying that now Iran feels empowered twice, Matt, because on the one hand, their ally Russia is expanding. On the other hand, we are now running in the midst of a war in Ukraine to sign an agreement with the Iranians, the Iran deal. Now, at this point in time, this should be the last moment we should be doing this. And we're going to provide money to the Iranian regime. And what is it they're going to do with the money? Reform their economy? No. They're going to buy weapons. From whom? From Russia. So on the one hand, we put sanctions on Russia with one hand. On the other hand, we are giving that money to Iran to buy weapons from Russia. And I think that the Israelis are nervous. I think that the Arab coalition, the Abraham Accord partners, and the peoples of the region are very nervous about this mistake we are about to do in the next few weeks, I believe.
Clearly we have a jittery Europe, and we have this very strange situation where we have an American president that seems to be sending a message to the tyrants around the world that they can do what they want. Why didn't the Biden administration put sanctions on Russia before the start of hostilities? Why did they think it was better to hold off on those sanctions until it seemed like the invasion had already started? What was their thinking?
Well, it starts here, Matt, as you know better than anybody else. You have a sense for American politics. It's about selling our own oil to our own people. He doesn't want to open that path again. So he will have to import oil, and the biggest place to import oil is Russia. Now that he has decided otherwise, guess what? It's going to go from bad to worse. We are going to buy oil from Iran with all the ramifications. And we have a delegation now meeting with the leadership of Venezuela, the Maduro regime. And one of the conditions of the Maduro regime is that we stop recognizing the legitimate leader of Venezuela, our ally, the free ally. I think that is very bad. And our friends in Latin America, your friends, my friends, the Bolsonaro government and everybody else feel the pressure and are very nervous about it as well.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think not just Europe, I said Europe is jittery, but I think our allies around the globe. As we conclude our conversation, Walid, we appreciate you making time for us. What should we be worried about as far as the next steps? What should our CPAC community be attuned to as this unfolds?
The CPAC community is very important. I've been part of these activities, and I know how intelligent they are. And they are in the front lodges of the foreign policy debate everywhere. So it is very important to keep the pressure through Congress and our friends, and I know you have many friends, that the United States, through this administration, is not going to make more mistakes as we are facing the war in Ukraine. That we see clearly on Ukraine, but we should not be rushing to Iran to cut a deal now. We should not be rushing to Venezuela to cut a deal now. We should not continue to allow the Taliban to abuse the rights of their society. So much work to be done in terms of bringing awareness to the American public. And I know that our CPAC people are amazing in terms of communicating, in terms of debating.
Well, Walid, Phares, we'll have you back on the road with us around the globe and here in this country to address these really important issues as you've done in the past. Thanks for joining us on America Uncanceled. We're going to be right back after this short break.
Thank you.
announcing the United States is targeting the main artery of Russia's economy. We're banning all imports of Russian oil and gas and energy. That means Russian oil will no longer be acceptable at U.S. ports, and the American people will deal another powerful blow to Putin's war machine.
Welcome back to CPAC Now, America Uncanceled. It was great to talk to Walid Phares, somebody we worked so closely with during the Trump years and has an important voice now. And it's been great to talk with KT McFarland, one of our board members, and to see her all over television helping people understand what's going on in the Ukraine. And I want to specifically talk about what we're going through with these high gas prices. I think the false thing that's going on here is what the new Socialist Democratic Party always wanted was for fossil fuel prices, namely gas prices, diesel prices, to be so high that we don't use our vehicles, that we don't use our tractors, our buses, our minivans, our trucks, our cars, our sports cars, whatever you have in your driveway or on the street. They don't want us to use them because they believe every mile you drive those things, you're destroying the fragile ecological system of the globe. So when they're out there saying, oh, we don't want these high gas prices, it's because of Vladimir Putin, you got to stop and think. They've had this as part of their Green New Deal strategies for a couple of decades now. Remember, it was Al Gore who first proposed the concept of a BTU tax. And the whole idea was every BTU you use to heat your house, to run your car, to run your business, whatever, would be taxed. Why would they tax your energy? Because they want you to use less of it. It's all about constraining your use of fossil fuels by making the price higher and higher and higher. And here's the other tragedy. As Joe Biden has taken off these new energy infrastructure projects off the list and used his phone and his pen to stop these projects with his presidential power and probably misusing his presidential power, some of these deals never come back. You have investors, you've gone through a long regulatory and legal process. When the President of the United States then denies you in the red zone on the 5-yard line, it might be that the deal can never be put back together again. And that's a big problem for the future of our country. Many of these infrastructure projects have been going through the regulatory process for years and years and years. So a lot of people keep saying Joe Biden could solve this tomorrow by reversing these executive orders, literally turning on the light switch. And unfortunately, I think it's become a lot more complicated than that. And we have to ask ourselves, why do Socialist Democrats want to make it so hard on average American citizens, people who live paycheck to paycheck, the forgotten men and women, working men and women, people who aren't extremely wealthy? Why are they trying to make it so hard on them? And I think it's because they're married to this concept that the woke white elite love to talk about, things like climate change, even when it makes it harder on a union person, a working person, a middle class person. They'd rather sign up with the elites that attend Davos than all of you that attend a CPAC. And this shift from helping the blue collar person, the immigrant, to hanging out with the woke white elites and the oligarchs is a big shift that we've seen in our politics. And we're going to keep waging these fights here at CPAC each and every day. And next week, there's another fight coming up as the NCAA will be hosting a new round of college swim meets. And we have this whole question of biological males competing with women athletes. As the father of 5 girls, I take this very seriously. And I think all of us are taking this very seriously. This normalization that people can select their gender, choose their gender, alter their gender, choose one of 62 genders. I think Facebook was one of the first online platforms to push this idea. You weren't just like male or female, you were one of 62. And what does that mean? Well, that means that girl athletes, women athletes are losing out to biological males throughout, high school and college competitions. And I think what we've all seen with these biological male swimmers competing against women, I think all of us view it as just simply wrong. It's making a victim of these women athletes and also just perpetuating this idea of the war on gender. Now look, Adults in a free country might be able to have all of these surgeries to alter their physical appearances. Those are decisions adults make. When the bureaucrats and the educrats try to push this idea of gender confusion on our kids, I think we got to draw the line. Kids should not be encouraged to question and choose different forms of whatever they view the options are in terms of gender. We have to draw the line. These brave parents in Virginia, they found out what was happening in these classrooms. Sometimes it was during the lockdowns and the Zoom classroom discussions. Also, they just started realizing at school boards what was going on, whether it was CRT 1619 or all this war on gender. We got to get back to some common sense. As the left often lectures us on science, they say they're the party of science and the movement of science. Well, biology is basic science as well. And as we have for the past several years, CPAC will continue to fight professional and intercollegiate sports when they overstep the lines on perpetuating this war on gender. Matter of fact, you can go to our website at conservative.org and sign a petition to the NCAA to make sure that biological males can't take away the ribbons and the trophies from these great women athletes at the collegiate level. So I encourage you to go to our website at conservative.org and do that. And remember that at CPAC, we score all these votes in the legislative chambers. We score every state legislator across the country, and we also score all the congressmen and senators here in Washington, D.C. And this is one of the issues we'll continue to keep a careful watch on. I created a bit of a dust up with a tweet that I sent out recently talking about the fact that although we have these policy positions, we also have to understand these are human beings involved in these great human tragedies, including this war on gender. And there are parents that are having their hearts broken. There are kids that are suffering from what must be a terrible thing when people question their gender. And I think we can do the right thing, stand up for biology and for science, stand up for girls' sports, and still do it with decency. And we'll continue to do that at CPAC each and every day. We're not backing down on these fights, and we got to understand along with these fights comes a lot of hardship from people as well, including the families of the women athletes who are denied their rightful place on these podiums and with the awards and really the history they're making as athletes, because they're denied that because they have unfair competition from biological males. So let's all stay engaged on this fight. We appreciate you watching another episode of America Uncanceled. It's great that we've been able to get through CPAC alive and invigorated and pumped up for the fights we have throughout the year. It's going to be a big and important year. Thanks for watching.